sorry that I've had some personal things happen that I haven't been able to be around, but I should be back going forward. Knock wood. We also, just to give you a little bit of stuff, we're going to be doing a video with Jordan from SaberSim after this. So I'm going to keep this live pretty quick. For the early slate, I will also be going live before the main slate tonight. And it's a big day for DFS. We got the PGA Championship, as I mentioned. It should be fun. So I'm looking forward to doing all that and getting back on track, and miss my little community, miss y'all. And I'm excited to be back with you guys. And hopefully there's going to be a day or two here and there that I'm going to have to disappear. But for the most part, I should be around again going forward. But anyway, excuse my nose. It's been a little bit of a under the weather thing. No COVID, don't worry, nothing like that. But once we get a few people in here, I'll go through my plays. And when you do get on in, say what's up, say hello, and we'll go through the slate together. So So anyway, so I'm just right now figuring out my sort of final thoughts, because like I said, we're going to do the video for the PGA Championship right after this. So it's something I'm going to have to try and figure out pretty soon. Thanks to the nice words, Kevin. I appreciate that. And let's get into what I'm going to do, because I'm not seeing. There it goes. It's starting to show a few people in there. I wasn't seeing anybody at first. Please do like and subscribe and all that nonsense, and then let's just get right into it. Look, I have the Dodgers as the number one stack of the day, followed by the Giants and the Tampa Bay. I don't think there's anything at all unusual. Like, that's extremely common. So we're going to have to try and find ways to get different. So if we're going to stack, we have to find, off the board plays to mix with our stacks, or we have to get different with our pitching. And the pitching is pretty deep. I think that you could, a guy who I don't expect to be played much is Buehler, after a really, ugly outing against Philadelphia the other day. But, I mean, we got to remember his 3 previous games were awesome, including against these Diamondbacks, who he just absolutely dominated and had a complete game shutout. What was that? I believe it was April 25th. So I think this is a really good idea to get a little different and maybe use some Buehler in your mix, just as a way of getting off of the Corbin Burns, Fried, Rasmussen, Gray chalk. I think almost all the ownership would go to those 4 guys. So I do think you can get a little bit different with taking a shot on Buehler. I also think you could make an argument for Dalton Jeffries. I think that no one's sort of talking about this kid. And yeah, Minnesota's stack makes a little sense too. But I think that Jeffries is getting a little bit overlooked, considering he's 5,400. He's basically, been solid enough in real life. And I think that, it's an interesting spot to take a shot on him. For what it's worth, the only umpire information that I think is relevant is that we do have an extreme pitchers umpire, Roberto Ortiz, in the Dodger game. Every other game is sort of blah. I think that if I'm trying to get, and again, it's not going to be too different because it's a 5-game slate, but I think if you really want to try and get something a little bit different, maybe you stack Tampa Bay and the Dodgers and ignore San Francisco to some extent, or maybe just play your favorite bats. I think Tampa Bay is probably my favorite of the quote, like, other stacks. I think that Minnesota would be the other one, but the Dodgers and Giants should eat up all the ownership. I have zero interest in the Rockies. I say this all the time. Logan Webb, like, maybe it's because I'm too close to it, but he's a really good real life pitcher, and he dominated, some of the best offenses in baseball, including my Dodgers in the postseason. Really doesn't give up hard contact, doesn't give up home runs. It's been a little bit worse this year, and with all regard to all those. Didn't walk anybody last year. He's starting to walk a few guys this year. I just think he's a good enough pitcher to where I don't need to try to pick on him just because he's in Coors Field. At the same time, the Rockies will be significantly lower owned than the Giants will. So you can take that for what it's worth, and maybe you're more comfortable mixing that in. I think I would at most probably want to look at a 3-man stack from Colorado. So I think Tampa Bay and Minnesota are your ways to get a little bit different. Again, even Tampa Bay, you're going to have some guys with ownership. So you might even have to go down towards some of the bottoms, or maybe playing Yandy Diaz at 4,800. I don't think it's going to be very popular. But I think guys like Wander Franco, Harold Ramirez will be fairly owned. So maybe that is, like, as I made the case for Rasmussen, for Jeffries, maybe there you could make the same case that, hey, look, we've got, play Correa, Kepler, Buxton, and then combine it with your favorite stack or something like that. Those guys I don't expect to have crazy ownership. So that is a way you can get a little bit different. I'm going to say what's up to my man Jim Steele in the chat, and fire on in any questions or thought. Again, this is going to be a very quick video because I've got to go straight from this to recording the PGA Championship video. I don't want to say the more important things because the baseball slates are really important, but it's a big golf week. And when we have a big golf week, we want to pay attention to it. And we're really excited to be doing it with the SaberSim people. Anyway, let's just jump back real quick. Some of the one-off or minis things that I like on this slate. Like I said, I think you can get a little different because I don't think playing some of the Colorado side, I don't think that's going to be very popular. But I don't like the idea of picking on Webb, so I'm more leaning towards the Minnesota, towards the Tampa Bay side of things than the others. And it is interesting to see if you look at just the run totals alone. The Detroit at being where they are just feels a little low. I mean, even as good as Rasmussen is and everything, and I think he's going to be pretty popular. But to have a below 3 run total, that sort of stands out as being just sort of caught me off guard, I guess is the best way to put it. In terms of weather for these games, like it's warm in Colorado. The wind is blowing in 8 miles an hour. If you want to find an excuse, it's not enough for me to be too worried about it. It is blowing out at Dodger Stadium at 8 miles an hour to left field. I think that's, a fairly good spot. It's going to be warm during the day today, 77 here in LA. So, I mean, the Dodgers are very obviously a good stack. I don't think it's going to take a genius to figure that out. The question is, how do you stack them to get it different enough? Because I think that they are going to be right near San Francisco in terms of ownership and for good reason. So I think that, guys like Justin Turner will probably be the lowest owned of the bunch. I think that, Gavin Lux in the 9 hole is a way to get a little different. Obviously playing Bellinger, who's been struggling, the 7 holes. Chris Taylor's been great and batting 8th. Maybe you could play just those 4 guys to get different with your stack and then include one of the big boys, depending on how that lineup shakes out. Don't be surprised if you see Edwin Rios or somebody like that in the lineup today. I do think the Dodgers might do. They tend to do different things on these day games. They also played a doubleheader yesterday. So I wouldn't be surprised if they come out with a totally different lineup than what we're thinking right now. We do need to win $1 million in PGA. But anyway, guys, that's sort of my rundown. I do have the Dodgers, again, as still my favorite, but I'm going to have to play some Tampa Bay, Minnesota to try to get a little bit off the board. And Tampa Bay may not even be off the board enough. So I might have to mix in some Minnesota while I still can make the case for Jeffries as an interesting pitching option. You're going to have to do something a little bit weird to try and win on this slate. And maybe it's the very bottom of the Dodger stack combined with your favorite Giants. But these Giants, I mean, you're going to see ownership like above 50% on certain players, and that just really shouldn't be the case. And I just want to always say the same thing about Freeland. Yes, of course, they're going to get to him sometimes. He got killed in his last outing against KC. Before that had been pretty darn good, this season in terms of limiting damage. They, had a rough start earlier this year against the Cubs, but even in that, gives up 1 home run. It's not like he's out there giving up like 5 bombs a game. And I don't want to just make him sound like he's the absolute worst. I think he's got more talent maybe than he has credit for. As bad as he is, it's a lot largely a result from pitching in Coors. Obviously, that's where he's pitching today. But I do want to say I wish DK would do what they used to do and just go for the hike it up pricing on these guys, making it harder to get in. Because it's not fun to play slates where guys are 50% owned, and that's the obvious spots. I mean, these guys should be 6K, making it tough to get them in. How do we do it? And we can't really get that creative because they're just basically too cheap. So it's kind of frustrating. I'm starting to like the idea of the bottom of the Dodgers stack, maybe with a couple bats from San Francisco. I think my favorite bat would be Flores. Flores, Ruff, Slater make the most sense, along with Longoria. But maybe you get a slightly lower ownership on Yastrzemski if he's in the lineup batting, with the lefty-lefty. Brandon Crawford maybe slightly lower because of the lefty-lefty, and you've got other good shortstops on the slate. Brandon Belt, the lefty-lefty, but you're not really getting different with enough of the ownership. And again, I think I'm just going to have to commit to myself that I'm going to have to try to pick some Minnesota bats together, put some Minnesota bats together just to get off of some of this really, really heavy chalk. I'm not ready to pick on Max Fried, and I'm not ready to pick on Corbin Burns. So I do think there is an argument to be made for Acuna as a one-off. I think it's just he's actually like a phenomenal way to that immediately gets you different. And this guy could outscore everybody on the slate every time he plays. He's too cheap, even with the groin issue, which is probably going to keep him from running quite as much. He just puts up 1 million fantasy points. Look at his game log. It's actually crazy. Like 14, 19, 24, 14. And that's all with just 2 home runs in that time because he steals bases literally every day. It just feels like a sure thing, and it's not going to be high owned. So anyway, guys, I do appreciate you tuning in. I will be back live for the main slate later. And let's crush it today. I'll be in Discord with any thoughts or questions. I will also talk about some showdown slate for the NBA as we go live this afternoon. So let's get it. Like and subscribe before we get out of here. I'm going to go film the PGA Tour video, but we are around for you. We got Rody in the Discord all the time. I'll be in Discord all day. And if there's any thoughts or questions, please fire them on in there, and we will do our best to answer them as soon as we possibly can. So let's make some money, guys. Good to be back. Missed y'all, and let's crush it.